it's Peter Parfitt and welcome to this demonstration and review of the Festool Rotex 150 sander. I have one here. Let's start straight away by looking inside the box. And inside you have the sander itself, and in my case this is the Rotex 150 FEQ plus GB240, and that's its full title. It's a 240 volt machine which has come from the UK market. You also have inside the box the Festool plug-it cable, you have an edge protector, you have one sanding sheet, you have an auxiliary handle, and you have the usual instruction manual and guarantee information. Now I'm making a second video about this sander where I'm doing a project to produce a garden bench out of oak. But for now, let's look at the detail of this sander and then see how it performs. Now the Rotex family of sanders have two principal modes of operation. They can operate in the rotary mode where the sanding disc is spinning constantly, or in an eccentric mode where the sanding disc is rotating but with an eccentric pattern of movement. And the switch to control this is just here. It's a two-position switch, one position there for eccentric sanding and that way for rotary sanding. Now inside the sander is a 720 watt motor which is made in the Festool factory in Germany. And there is a speed control at the back here which goes from 1 up to 6, and the speed can be varied so that in rotary mode it is going between 320 and 660 revs per minute, and in eccentric mode it goes between 3300 and 6800 revs per minute. It has inside the Festool patented MMC electronics, which means that under load it maintains a constant speed. So no matter how hard you work this sander, it will always be going at the speed you set it. It also has some very clever temperature sensing technology inside where the motor is to detect if the motor's been running for hours on end and it's starting to get too warm. It slows the machine down and goes through then a cooling cycle until the motor is back at a normal operating temperature, and it then resumes the speed that you had set it at before. The on-off switch is here. Now there are three main sanding discs for this machine. There is a hard one which is used for flat surfaces, both coarse and fine sanding, and also for doing edge work. There is a soft one, and that is the one that's supplied with the machine, which is also a general purpose sanding disc which can be used for both flat and moderate contours. And then there is a very soft sanding disc which is particularly suited to contour work but is not suited to edge work. Now the sanding disc can be changed by switching the machine into rotary mode and then pressing this spindle lock here and then untwisting, and that then releases the sanding disc. And you can now see the three-pronged mechanism here, which is at the heart of the Festool Fast Fix system, which makes changing of sanding discs very simple indeed. Now the sanding disc has a variety of holes on it, and it's part of what Festool call their multi-jet stream principle, and it's one which makes sure that the dust gets taken away very efficiently. Festool have got a reputation for really clever dust extraction and dust collection from their tools, and this is all part of that concept. And if you look at the sanding sheet that I'm about to put on now, that has holes which match up with those on the disc. And because there are so many holes here, what happens is the sanding sheet itself remains much cleaner and much clearer of debris during operation, which means that these then last longer, and it's a great benefit. And you'll see this when I do the demonstration. And now we need to fit the edge protector. Basically this protects a vertical edge if you're sanding up to it to stop the edge of the sandpaper from making a mark on that vertical edge. And so it's fitted very simply. There's a little notch there. I go around to this other side and fit it, and that's it in place. So we're almost ready to use this for the first time. Now, I've mentioned the very clever multi-jet stream dust collection concept. Well, the dust comes up through this part of the handle and then out to your dust extractor through this connector here. Now, you can remove this part of the handle. There's a little green catch here, which if I press down on it, it then releases that part. And some people might prefer to remove that if they're using these sanding fleeces where there's no need to have a dust extractor working whilst you're using them. I think I would probably leave it in place, but it is worth knowing that that can be taken off very easily. And a final point is that some people prefer to use the auxiliary handle, which could be screwed on either onto the right hand side or to the left hand side of the sander. Now I'm going to turn it on for the first time now, and I want you to notice just how smoothly it starts up. So there's no jerking, it starts beautifully smoothly. And that's in both rotary and eccentric mode. So no sudden jolt when you start. Right, these are the two pieces of wood that I'm going to use for my tests. The first is a piece of wood which, to be honest, I don't know what species it is, but all I do know is when I've tried to plane it, I've not got a satisfactory finish. Yet the grain under there is beautiful, and I just cannot do anything with it with the planer. And so I'm going to use the Rotex on it. I think it'll make a good job. The other task, which is also part of the other video I'm going to make with the Rotex 150, is this piece of oak here. And you can see just how rough this is. This is straight from the wood yard. It's not been planed at all. It's split, it's rough, and I'm going to use this as part of a garden bench, which is the project video, which I'll make later. So let's get cracking. This piece of wood first. Now, unlike the oak, this piece of wood isn't too bad at the starting point. And so I'm going to try and start with 120 grit Rubin 2. And I'm also going to try in eccentric mode, and I've got the speed setting set to 6. I'm connected to my dear old faithful CT26 dust extractor, or another one of the unsung heroes in the workshop, and the power cord goes to that machine as well. So here we go. Now, I was asked a question about stability of this machine by someone who popped into the workshop a few minutes ago, and I was able to demonstrate to them just how stable it is. And so I'm now going to demonstrate it to you. Just watch this. Now that's pretty stable. Well, I've gone to 180 grit, and that is pretty smooth. But you can't really see just how nice it is. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you in closer, I'm going to put a bit of oil on there, and then you'll see just how lovely it looks. Now that's pretty good. It's beautifully smooth. The grain looks lovely. And someone out there is going to be able to tell me what species of wood this is. Now I've got an old piece of veneered MDF here, and I'm about to cut it into a lid for a drop box for someone. And I thought I'd just demonstrate to you that you can sand veneers with a sander like this. It's gentle enough to be able to tackle even thin veneers. So here we go. look, you just look at this. That is pretty good considering how rough it was to start with. Just look how bad it was here, and that's what this side was like before I began work on it. I'm using 120 grit Reuben 2, and I wasn't being gentle with it. I was just going about it in the normal fashion, and there's no danger there that I was going to go through that veneer. Right, now this is the bit that I've been really looking forward to doing. This is a really rough old bit of oak. I've got lots of bits like this, and those are all going to be used to make this garden bench, which will be the subject of a project video. But this piece I've separated out from the others just to demonstrate to you how well or otherwise the Rotex 150 is tackling something as bad as this. I've got in here some 60 grit granite paper, and I've got a hard sanding disc under there because I want to try and keep everything nice and flat. Well, that's the 60 grit. First of all I did it in rotary mode, and then I finished off with it in eccentric mode. I'm now going to go to 80 grit. Well, that was 80 grit, that was Reuben 2, and it's the same piece of Reuben 2 that I was using when I did that first piece of wood, and there's hardly any sign of any dirt discoloration or dirt coming in here. Look at that, that's pretty good. So I'm now going to go to 120. Well, that was 120 grit, Reuben 2, and I did it first in rotary, then in eccentric, and that's coming up beautifully. Well, that's 180 grit, and again it was rotary followed by eccentric, and that really does feel lovely. And that is as good as I need for this project I'm going to be doing later. So you saw it start off as a pretty rough piece of oak. Just to remind you, there's the other side, and it's turned into that. So it's no longer the ugly duckling. And I thought just to prove the point I would put a little bit of oil on here and then give it a rub off with one of these fleeces. And look at that, absolutely top notch. Now I'm already a convert to Rotex sanding. I bought my Rotex 90 over a year ago and I love it. But the Rotex 150 is in a class of its own. It's a big sander, yet it's very easy to control, even with one finger. It's a big sander, yet it's not tiring to use it for long periods of time. It's a big sander, which means that you can do large jobs very quickly. And you've seen me do this large piece of MDF, which is covered in veneer, this piece of wood, and then finally my lovely piece of oak. And it tackled them with no problem whatsoever. It's been a joy to use. There's no significant vibration going into your hands. There's no significant noise as far as I'm concerned. And the dust collection is superb. Most of the time I was not wearing a mask. I only wore a mask when I was machining this piece of wood because I just don't know what it is. Now when you're making up your mind whether to buy a tool like this, you've got to think in terms of your efficiency and productivity. How much time you'll save by using a tool which is as sophisticated as this. How much joy you'll have from using a tool which is so well engineered. And also how much better the quality of your output will be. Now, you'll see more of this tool in my next video about the garden bench, but already I'm convinced that this is a superb tool from Festool. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon. Bye-bye.